The next topic I want to cover about strings is this thing called string interpolators. So the way I like to explain this is we need a couple of variables first. So I will say Alvin, and then last name equals Alexander. And now, one thing you could do, and we did this back in the old days, was we would say val full name equals first name, then we would do a plus, and then we could either use a space character or a single space in a string like that, and then we would do last name here, and that creates a new string where full name is Alvin space Alexander. And a string interpolator, let me just go ahead and type that over again. A string interpolator instead lets us do this. We start with the letter S, and I'll talk about the meaning of that here in a little bit, but basically it creates a simple string interpolator. And now I can use $ first name space $ last name, like that. So notice here that I'm just using double quotes, and then I'm using the variables inside those double quotes, and each variable is preceded by a $. And that gives me the same result. And the benefit of this is that as your examples get more and more complicated, string interpolation is much easier to use. And really the only magic you need to know at this point is you precede a string with the letter S, and then inside the string, when you're using variables, you precede those with the $. And with this S string interpolator, there's really only one other thing you need to know, and that's when you have expressions, let's say result equal, let me do an S, you can put any kind of expression inside of curly braces like this. So I could say 1 plus 1, like that. Or actually, I'm sorry, I need the $ right there. So that shows how to create an expression like that. That's again when using a string interpolator, you want an expression inside of a string. This is important in more complicated examples, so let me just paste some code in here. I'm going to create what's called a case class named person, and it's going to take these two parameters, first name and last name. And then I'm going to create an instance of a person like that. And then the reason I'm doing this is I can show you that when you want to do now a full name, you would say S, and then open the quote. And now you can't do this. So if I were to try to do first name space $P dot last name, this is not going to give you a desirable result. It actually prints, using this, it actually prints the entire person class. And that's because it's processing $P rather than what I want. So the key of this one is that when you're calling a method on an instance like person, that you just need to enclose each method call in the curly braces. And then I just want to show a few more things about interpolators in Scala. The first thing to say is that Scala has two other built-in interpolators, and the easiest way to explain these other interpolators is to demonstrate them in the REPL. So here I've already pasted in these three variables, name, age, and weight, just so you don't have to watch me type. And what I want to do first is I will show the S string interpolator, which I've already shown you. And again, I've pasted this in so you don't have to watch me type. But the important part here is that this S interpolator, begins with the letter S, and then it uses the techniques I've already shown you. So when I hit return there, the line, shows that Fred is 33 years old and he weighs 200.0 pounds. And so here you see kind of a weakness of the S interpolator is that it just prints whatever is going to be printed by the data type. So basically whatever the toString method is of the data type, that's what you're going to see when you use the S string interpolator. So name is a string, so you see that here printed as Fred. Age is an int, which you see up here, 33. So this is the way an int or integer prints. And then over here, weight is a double. And so this is the way the double prints by default. And that's kind of the problem. And the way we fix this is with the F string interpolator. So I'm just going to paste that in and then discuss that now I begin the string with the letter F instead of the letter S. And I don't do anything different here, but over here, what I can do is I can add in this formatting syntax to say that when you print the weight value, print it with 2 decimal places. And this shows that result. Similarly, I could go back here and I could say, you know what, I don't want any decimal places for this example, so we'll put 0 there, and then that goes back to 200 pounds. So F is an interpolator that lets us apply formatting to each element inside the string. And inside the string with the F interpolator, you can use all the characters that we use normally with printf style functions in C, Java, and so on. So I have this printf reference page. You can see that you can use all characters like this, and then I have a couple of tables down here that show the other characters that you can use. For instance, in my example, I use %F to control the floating point formatting as desired. And similarly, you use %D to format whole numbers. And if you keep scrolling down here a little bit, I do show some, a little bit further, some %F examples down here. So these correlate directly or almost directly to the same formatting strings that you can use here with the F interpolator and this syntax right there. So that's the F interpolator. And there's also one other interpolator that's built into Scala, and this one is called the raw interpolator, so I can show that again. I can say val a equals, and we'll just do s. So I can do foo \n bar, like that. Oops, I didn't spell it right, but anyway, for bar. And you can see that for and bar, when they're assigned to A, are actually on separate lines, and that's because of the \n character. And then what the raw interpolator does is we replace s with raw, and raw lets us keep that character in there. And so I've shown you so far that there's 3 string interpolators built into Scala. And that they are the letter S, the letter F, and then the word raw. And I just showed all of those examples there. A really important part of this is that not only are there built-in Scala string interpolators, but third-party libraries can add their own interpolators. And so I demonstrate that here on my website. This is just one example. So this was for a library called anorm that came with the Play framework, and then I believe they broke that out into a separate library. But the important part is that they create their own interpolator, and they call theirs SQL or SQL. So you precede a string, which is typically, obviously going to be a SQL string here with this, and then they can interpolate that as desired. So the important part is that any third-party library can create any kind of interpolator they want, and you will see this a lot in SQL libraries. You'll also see it with JSON and similar type libraries. And the last thing I'll mention is, even though I haven't shown multi-line strings yet, way back when I created my own Q interpolator, and this was based on Q from another programming language. I can't think of it at the time. I think it was Ruby. So basically a multi-line string in Scala begins and ends with 3 double quotes. So what I was doing was I created this Q interpolator, and it would take in this multi-line string, which in this case, had these 3 lines, apples, banana, and cherries. It also has a new line character here and here. So I would take that input, and then my Q interpolator would transform that into a list that looks like this. So that's a homemade string interpolator. So I wrote this interpolator for Scala 2, and then when I wrote the second edition of the Scala cookbook, I updated this for Scala 3. So if you're interested, you can find this tutorial on how to write your own string interpolator on my website.